Welcome to the Permission to Be You podcast. In this episode, Yarraka sheds light on a number of things that, if I'm really honest, if I'm really truthful, I was sheltered from. I didn't know the extent to which children harm themselves, the extent to which bullying is taken, cyberbullying, children being bullied at school, discrimination, racism, and as a result, indigenous children taking their own lives. I was very touched by a note that was left by a 12-year-old child who said, perhaps with now me being gone, the bullying will stop. I think it's a blow to my stomach, a 12-year-old child wanting to solve this worldwide thorn in our side. And I started this podcast because I want to raise awareness. One, firstly, because I believe in the importance and the impact that one can have on being themselves, on fully embracing themselves as they are. That is where I believe true respect starts, true peace starts with embracing oneself. And secondly, to shed light on social issues that really need a lot of our love, compassion, and attention. And also a need to not be silent, to put a stop to injustice if we see it happening right in front of our eyes. To take charge of a situation if we see injustice happening, we see someone being bullied, if we see that someone is being discriminated. I have a voice, you have a voice. Exercise it. Do what is right. This conversation was amazing. I hope you listen to the end, and I sincerely hope that you share it to raise more awareness. Quaden is, to me, a young hero. He has been subjected to several operations. He hasn't got a simple form. He's got the most common form of dwarfism, but he had complications which needed complicated surgeries, and some of which were life-saving surgeries. Thanks for joining me, and Yarraka and Quaden. Today, my guest is a very young, sweet boy who I saw on video on Facebook. And when I saw him, I was mad. It was really painful for me to watch him and his mother say what he was saying. I don't even want to repeat it right now. It was too painful then. And it touched me so much that I decided to go live. And this was, I think, February. I'm not sure. February, yeah, of this year. And Quaden, my guests today are Quaden Bayles and his mother, Yarraka Bayles. And they stumbled upon my video, my YouTube video. They reached out, they said thank you, and then I invited them to be my guests, and they said yes. And I'm really honored. It's my birthday today, and this is the gift I'm giving myself, a conversation with these two beautiful people. So welcome, Quaden, welcome, Yarraka, and thank you for accepting my invitation.
It's an absolute pleasure, and happy birthday. It's great to be able to have a yarn, and yeah, especially on a special day. So thank you.
Thank you. So can you start, I don't know with who to start with. Can you, Quaden, can you tell me a bit about yourself, what you like doing, what your hobbies are?
I like sports,
Mhm.
eating,
I
He's
love
eating
eating.
right now.
I love
He's-
eating.
Food is life, yes. And what else do you love?
games.
Games.
Mhm.
And
That's it.
okay.
That's it. And how old are you?
9.
You're 9.
Yes.
Okay. And now I'm going to ask a question that, do you like school?
No.
No. I hated it too, because their style of teaching wasn't quite wasn't my style. But anyway, this is not about me. Quaden, can you tell me why you don't like school?
The bullies.
Because
The bullies.
Are they still bullying you?
Yes.
Okay. Yarraka, I'm going to try and swing this between the two of you, okay?
Sure.
I want to include Quaden.
Yes.
Can you tell me where you're from in Australia? Sorry, I didn't ask you, Quaden. Where are you from? Where are you both from?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And just tell me a bit about your life, in the sense that, what do you enjoy doing? What are you passionate about? And tell me about this T-shirt, Team Quaden.
Sure. So in our language, we usually introduce ourselves and acknowledge where we are. So I'll say, Waramuli, Aniganiantan, Amuampa Yarraka Yobanango. And in English, that is, hello everyone, my name is Yarraka Yobanango. And we acknowledge the Yaggara people. So we're in Brisbane at the moment. The local traditional owner groups, or the tribes in Brisbane, are the Yaggara and Turrbal people. And I acknowledge my mum's tribes, the Wonnarua and Bundjalung nations of New South Wales, just north of Sydney here in Australia. And my dad's tribes are the Birigubba and Gungaloo people of central Queensland up north, on the south coast or east coast of Australia is where my parents are from. So as Aboriginal people, we always introduce ourselves by acknowledging whose land we're on. We pay our respects to all sovereign people, and we acknowledge our parents' lineage. So that's following proper protocol on how a lot of Aboriginal Australian people introduce themselves and acknowledge who they are and where they're from.
I have absolutely no knowledge of tribes. It's fascinating to me, and I'd love to hear more, but I'm not sure if it will help the cause, in the sense it will not help, it will put me off course, off subject.
Sure.
But at one point I saw a post of yours on Facebook which said that you have enough discrimination as Aborigines. This added to it makes life a little bit more difficult. Can you tell me more about that?
Definitely. So I recall saying something along the lines of being an Aboriginal person with a disability is like a double-edged sword, because in Australia, as Indigenous people, we only make up around 3% of the population in our own country, where we weren't even considered citizens up until 1967. So I guess the Indigenous Australian population that we belong to are a minority. So if you put in the mix of that, having a disability and being Aboriginal, it's like you're a minority of a minority. So what I'm seeing a lot of is the discrimination and the racism, and then also being discriminated against or targeted because you're born different. And that's when I made that comment. Raising an Aboriginal child with a disability is like a double-edged sword, because there are so many obstacles. And I think with sharing our story, it has uncovered so many different topics, from Indigenous youth suicide to not just bullying or anti-bullying programs, but it's actually given a huge insight into the life of a child with a disability and what it is like, because a lot of the times families suffer in silence. So we've received a huge amount of support just thanking us for shedding light on a very sensitive situation that a lot of people are either too scared to talk about, or it's too late because the children have taken their lives due to bullying or discrimination or racism. And as Indigenous Australians, my son is in the highest demographic. So our young Indigenous boys here have the highest suicide rates in the world per capita, which is really alarming. And that's why we continue to share our story, to raise awareness and let people know these are the statistics that are affecting us every single day. And this is why we will not stop until our work is done, which I guess will never be done. Because if you understand bullying, it's been around for generations and it is getting worse because you've got different types of bullying. Cyberbullying is what is still rife at the moment. It's really difficult to shelter my children and my family from the attacks, most of the online attacks and the death threats. So it's been really difficult to deal with that aspect.
Can I slow you down a little bit? You mean your son, Quaden, you get cyberbullied because you're Indigenous and because he's a special kid? That too? Are you serious?
Yeah.
So you have other children?
Yes, so I'm a single mother of 3. My twin daughters are turning 21 and I've got a granddaughter who's turning 1 in a couple of months. So it's the 5 of us.
Oh, wow. So you said something that really struck me before. You said that the highest suicide rate per capita in Australia is because you're Indigenous. So children commit suicide because they're Indigenous, because they get bullied because of being Indigenous.
Yes, and what came to light last year was a 12-year-old girl who left a suicide note, a 12-year-old Aboriginal girl, and she said, maybe when I'm gone, the racism will stop. So it's very well known what the issues are, the despair in a lot of our Aboriginal communities because of the impacts of invasion and genocide and the discriminatory laws under the race power laws here in Australia that still exist. We have the highest incarceration rate. African American people had the highest incarceration rate up until just recently, when Indigenous Australians now overtake the African American population. So even though we only make up 3% of the population in this country, there are prisons and juvenile detention centres 100% occupied by Aboriginal youth and Aboriginal male and female prisoners.
I'm dumbfounded. I'm speechless. So
yeah.
So if I understood you correctly, when you went live, when you filmed that particular incident, when Quaden was saying, kill me, somebody kill me, it was a catalyst for uncovering many other problems, many Indigenous children who are committing suicide. So in a way, it was terrible to see, but perhaps you started a movement towards something that can bring respite, and you can do something about the actual bullying.
Definitely. And that, like you said, the silver lining, there's always a positive to be drawn out of the negative. And it has been a blessing in disguise, as difficult as it's been to be able to, go public over something so sensitive. If I didn't go live, then nothing would have changed. He'd still be experiencing, things that were going on at school, and it would still be a very self-destructive cycle that we would be continuing. So just by that video, it has uncovered a lot of systemic racism in this country. The statistics, a lot of people are now aware of what's really going on in this country. It's been very empowering to see that just by one story, how much it has uncovered. It's not just about one child that got bullied. There's so many underlying issues that led to that one point in time when we went live with that video.
What inspired you to go live that day?
Frustration. I was just over it, you know, like I wanted people to see this is how it's affecting, and how do we know if our children are being bullied or if they are the ones that are displaying these behaviors at school. A lot of the times parents don't know, and I just felt the need out of despair. You know, I just wanted people to see that this is our life, this is our reality, and it's not improving. The anti-bullying campaigns and a lot of the, you know, programs in schools obviously isn't working, because the suicide rates are increasing as we speak. To think that there are children now that are self-harming and wishing they were no longer here is why we continue to speak up about this and no longer suffer in silence.
Wow. What is Team Quaden? Is it a movement you started? What is it all about? You're wearing a t-shirt. I'd love people to be able to see that, because I'm going to publish this on YouTube. So this Team Quaden.
So Team Quaden, established in 2010, his year of birth, regardless of what some people may think. Apparently he's an 18-year-old man or a 32-year-old actor.
A 32-year-old what?
Yeah, apparently he's a 32-year-old actor. There's a lot of conspiracy theories, a lot of fake news circulating, and I think with in light of what's going on in the world at the moment, there's a lot of people at home bored with nothing better to do. So there's a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of fake news that has been obviously very easy to debunk a lot of the myths, because our life is an open book. We've got nothing to hide. And you can Google us and see our documentaries from the very first brain surgery that Quaden had when he was 4 years old. So all of our information is public from, you know, the day he was born. My sister uploaded a photo of him with his date of birth. So when Quaden was 3 years old, we started noticing the very negative attention in public, unfortunately. So out of frustration, again, I started a campaign called Stand Tall for Dwarfism. And at that time, I just wanted to educate people, because Australia is so far behind. Whereas if you look at America and England and other places around the world, other developed countries, they've got the LPA, Little People's Association of America, as well as England. And in Australia, there is very little dwarfism awareness. So I just felt the need out of frustration to share our story, share our journey, so that people can see what it's like. And out of that came the merchandise. So I think I was trying to do way too much as a frustrated single mum of a child with achondroplasia dwarfism. Sometimes I think I was doing more harm than good, because I was just so desperate. I just wanted, you know, the comments to stop, even the cyberbullying from when I first started to share our journey. A lot of the hate that was coming through from, you know, the media attention that we were getting at the time of his first documentary that covered the brain surgery. And to me, that's a very, it was an educational tool for people to understand what exactly achondroplasia dwarfism is. He's just fallen asleep. So this is sleep apnea. Because he has severe obstructive sleep apnea, he will just literally fall asleep and snore at any given time.
That's okay.
Even midway. So
can you
even yes.
Could you walk me through some of the behind the scenes operations and all the complications, so that people can understand that it's not, you know, I want to create a sensitivity towards it, or an awareness.
Sure. Yes, definitely. Thank you. So Quaden's primary diagnosis at 3 days old, he was diagnosed with achondroplasia dwarfism. I was a 29-year-old mother of two at the time. And at the time of the diagnosis, Quaden Senior, Quaden's father, and my twin daughters were in the room when I got handed 2 pieces of paper with achondroplasia on it. And that was how we received the diagnosis. That sent me into a huge depression, denial, shock, because I'd never heard of that word, nor have I met anyone with that condition at that time. So within our 3% population of the indigenous community that we belong to in Australia, I'd never come across it. So there was no one for me to reach out to ask, like, you know, what does this mean? And then at 3 years old, Quaden started developing some abnormal brain activity. He had 7 teeth removed because of the overcrowding. So achondroplasia is the most common form of dwarfism. It's a random genetic mutation at conception. So 80% of children are born to average height parents. So anyone can have a child with any kind of different abilities, I guess. People have many different names. To be politically correct, you know, there's thousands of different disabilities. So Quaden is the only child or only person in our whole family that has achondroplasia dwarfism. And from the age of 3, we started noticing when he started walking. So the milestones were delayed, but his intelligence is far above average. So I definitely think that he overcompensates in areas. He may be short in height, but he definitely makes up for it in other areas. And on his 4th birthday, actually, we received the MRI results of his brain that showed decompression of his brainstem and spinal cord. So he was losing sensation in his arms and legs. He was falling over a lot, and he just wasn't himself. So I knew something was wrong. We took him into hospital and they did the MRI, and we got the news back on his 4th birthday. And not long after, about 5 years ago now, he had the decompression surgery of the spinal cord and brainstem. And that was the first major operation and probably the most scariest time in my life, to know the high risks involved.
I lost you for a few seconds. The worst time in my life?
Yeah, so the first major life-saving surgery when Quaden was 4 years old was definitely the scariest point in his life. To know the risks involved was really daunting. But the support of my family, my dad was alive at that time and my twin daughters, Quaden's father was in prison at the time. So it was quite, I felt like, you know, I was alone facing this, but I still had amazing family support. But at the end of the day, you know, it was just me and Quaden in hospital for up to a month at a time at times. So that was the first major operation. A week after the brain surgery, he had adenoids to open up the airwaves and the tonsils out, and also tubes inserted in his ears to remove the fluid. So he's still hearing impaired in his right ear. So he's had 5 operations on his ears. He's had an ICP monitor installed in his brain. He's had the brainstem and spinal cord decompression surgery. He's had 7 teeth removed, adenoids and grommets out, and tonsils out. So a lot of those are quite standard procedures for people born with achondroplasia, but then it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So we've met people with achondroplasia that have never had surgery in their life, and they live to be fully healthy, functioning human beings with amazing lives that are excelling in life. And I think if you see a lot of the shows on TV, you'll see amazing people in the dwarfism community around the world that are living their best life. So, you know, it's not all doom and gloom. Quaden has got so much strength and he's bounced back. The resilience that I see in such a young child and the lessons that I've learnt and the world, you know, has learnt from such a young child, I think has been remarkable. It's been a very powerful testimony in itself.
Can you talk to me about the lessons that you've learned?
Oh man, I think I was quite judgmental. I was very self-conscious, and now I'm aware that that rubs off onto anyone. And having twin daughters, very competitive, being twins. One's a bigger twin, one's a smaller twin, one's a model, one's a tomboy. So they're very, very opposite. And I have to constantly remind them when they say, you know, Mum, do I look fat in this or does it? I said, listen, Quaden has a condition where he's not able to change the way he looks. So I think it would be we need to be more mindful of what we say, because he now has a complex. He absolutely hates his diagnosis. He still has not come to terms with it. He hates the fact that he's not going to grow up to be big and tall and strong and play football like his father and his older brother. They play, you know, at a high level. So we come from a very athletic family. So having a child with a noticeable disability has a lot of limitations, and it's taught us to really appreciate the little things in life and not to complain about the way we look or, you know, the things that we can't do or don't have, because we've realized that there are so many limitations. There are so many things that Quaden will never be able to do. You know, most little boys want to grow up to be footballers. And I've explained to Quaden, I won't sugarcoat it and say, you know, yeah, that's beautiful. You know, you'll be able to do that, son. I've let him know there are no people with dwarfism that play in the NBA or play in the NFL. So you are destined for much bigger and better things. Sports is great, but it's not the be all or end all.
Yeah.
So it's opened our eyes and our hearts to a whole new world that we would never have known about, you know, unless we had this experience with Quaden. So it's definitely taught us unconditional love and acceptance, and to be kinder to ourselves and to each other.
Yeah, that's it. This is so amazing. What we learn when we are in brackets or in inverted commas, afflicted with something, or we think we're afflicted with something, because I try to de-gay myself. I'm a lesbian woman, I'm 53, and I desperately tried to stop being that. And what it taught me, the lesson it gave me, is to be compassionate, one, towards myself, and then to extend that compassion and forgiveness and to others.
Definitely.
What has the experience of the live video, what have you learned from that?
99% of the response has been very supportive. And then there's always going to be, you know, not everyone's going to agree, and that's fine. It's taught me that it's given me much deeper understanding and perspective of the way people receive that. And I actually apologize for the triggers, because that for me was a spontaneous moment out of frustration that I shared, because I was just sick of it. I wanted something to be done. And you could hear the despair in both of our voices at the time of that live video. Quaden was not feeling heard, was not feeling listened to. And he actually called out some of the staff at that school because he felt like he wasn't being heard or being listened to, because it was an ongoing situation. And I guess the response now, we've not had one person come up to us in public and abuse us or say anything negative. So I think the majority of the world saw that video for what it really was. It was a plea for help, and that plea for help has been answered. We've now been able to pay it forward and help several other families, especially with the donations that are hopefully, with COVID, it's actually put a hold on everything, but hopefully those funds will be able to be transferred from the American GoFundMe accounts into the donation, the charities that we've chosen.
What do you mean it's being put on hold? Sorry.
Oh, there's been I think the world has been on hold, and the delays involved with the virus.
Oh, so okay. That's what's been on hold. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, so there's still no funds being transferred. We have not received any monetary gain from this. And I guess the call that Brad Williams, the comedian with the same condition as Quaden, when he saw that video, he saw something in that resonated with him, something that he has experienced, and many other people, not just people with dwarfism or people of different ethnic backgrounds. People often, you know, especially today, in today's society, the suicide rate, it does not discriminate. You know, abuse or addiction, bullying, a lot of these behaviours, they don't discriminate, and a lot of people related to that. So when he started the GoFundMe, he asked for my permission, and I was saying no, and Quaden saying, yes, Mum, please, I've always wanted to go to Disneyland. So we agreed, and he asked for, you know, a $10,000 GoFundMe. When it went up to, you know, like almost $500,000 US, it was so overwhelming, and I felt very uncomfortable, because we grew up in Redfern, which is an Aboriginal community here in Sydney. We're from very humble beginnings, you know, and I'm a single mum. We don't own our own home or drive a fancy car or have private health insurance. So to see the generosity of strangers that just wanted to help a child have fun. It was really overwhelming. And then I started thinking about the bigger picture. And I didn't want people to see that this is a reward for one child. Like, how is that going to help the whole anti-bullying campaign? How is that helping reduce the suicide rates? So I had a good think about it, and I spoke to Quaden and I said, what would you like this money to do? And he's always had a heart for helping homeless people and people less fortunate. So we spoke about what we wanted, and we came up with the decision that we would like to donate that money to charity to be able to help as many people as possible not feel like that, to be able to offer support for family, especially children that are feeling alone. And a lot of the times it's been too late, you know, and I know that there are families that have reached out that have lost their children. And I know that my son is still alive because we spoke up. We had to swallow our pride and ask for help. And that was really hard because I'm a very proud, stubborn, strong, independent Aboriginal woman, and I don't like asking for help. I've done it by myself for a very long time. You know, my parents and grandparents and godparents have all passed away. So it's taught me to be strong, to be independent, and to be resilient. Yeah. So that generosity, the outpouring of love and support from
that was amazing.
People really like yourself, you know, yeah, that just reached out because it touched people's hearts. So it was just, it's still very overwhelming.
And I can imagine. I'm just, what about a foundation for people with, I can't pronounce the medical word. Sorry, I'm really bad with names.
No, that's okay.
What about starting a foundation to help people with this disability? Because, of course, yes, I want to help the homeless. Don't get me wrong. But I think you're a powerful woman. You are courageous. You're passionate. You have a strong message to share. And I'm sure that some of that money, I mean, this is me being me, thinking out aloud, that you could start a foundation and spread the love in that foundation to give more awareness of, listen, my son has been having so many operations, been discriminated against, and I'm sure there are people out there like you who could benefit from some money, from some sort of place where we can get together, connections, because in communities then, we empower one another, we give each other courage, people get together and we help each other, you know. So I know, definitely, that's me thinking out loud.
So with the donations, I chose 4 charities, and one of them is the non-for-profit that we established here in Brisbane for it's called Dwarfism Awareness Australia. So that's where we will be able to continue to do very important work to help support other children and families within the dwarfism community. So yeah, it's going to be great to see how far spread, you know. I've chosen an Aboriginal Healing Centre, I've chosen Balanu. There's lots of 4 different charities around Australia that we felt would far benefit, because I think it's important not to play the victim mentality, and I think that's what people were seeing. Like, poor me, a kid got bullied, boo-hoo, let's send him to Disneyland. That's not going to solve the problem. Although it was a very beautiful gesture, and we did accept that that offer at first, but you know, I just thought, I don't want the wrong message getting out. I don't want people to see that he's going to be rewarded just for being bullied. There are millions of children that are being, you know, bullied or discriminated or intimidated, any of these behaviours. And I'm very cautious because with a lot of the resilience coaching that we've received from Brooks Gibbs in America, he's given us a whole new light on using other words rather than bullying, because what that does is it shifts the blame on a child that the majority of the time is innocent.
Yes.
No children goes to school and intentionally tries to make a child take their life. So I'm very cautious because I don't want to label children as bullies. I just think if we can approach it differently and have more awareness around these alarming behaviours, how do we deal with the children that are displaying these behaviours, and how do we deal with children that are on the receiving end, like Quaden, that have you know, been susceptible to this behaviour for many years, in fact. So I think what I would love ultimately to see out of all of this is a whole new approach, because we all know that the anti-bullying campaigns, while they're great, they may raise awareness, but the statistics aren't improving. So I think that is proof in itself that we need to come at it another angle.
Actually, the word anti doesn't inspire, let's make it better.
Exactly.
So I'm with you, we're on the same page. And
Awesome.
the perpetrator is usually acting out of innocence and out of perhaps something that is learned.
Exactly. Learned behaviors.
Yeah, and I really believe that children, even though sometimes their behavior is cruel, I think at heart they want to be loved, they want to love. So yeah, you've touched upon so many subjects, and I didn't write down any notes. You've shared so much, but you've given us so much gold, Yarraka.
Thank you, Diane.
Yes,
appreciate
you have. I think we can come to a close if it feels good, right, for you, unless there's something more you want to add. I'm interested in knowing also, look at him.
Sorry?
Sleeping. I'm interested in knowing how it impacted him now, how he is, what his attitude towards life is now after that incident.
Well, with ongoing intense therapy. So today we went to a family counselling session. Last week he had a psychiatrist appointment. Brooks Gibbs still does video calls for resilience coaching, and we've all learned more valuable tools on how to deal with this better, because the reality is it's going to happen again and again and again, and we can never rid the world of bullying, just like the war on drugs or crime or anything like that. Anti-drug, anti-crime, anti-bullying, it's not working. So we need to learn how do we deal with it in a better way. And now we just have to raise our children to be more resilient. So when someone calls him a midget, he's going to say, yeah, so what? It's all good. Yeah, I'm a midget, big deal. And we do role plays now, and he actually tells me, Mum, call me a midget, call me a baby, call me big head. Like all the names that he hates, that he was being called at school. And it's difficult for me to do it because I'm his mum and I'm so sensitive and I feel things, you know, so deep, and it doesn't affect him anymore. Like it's been about 3 months of intense therapy. So on February 19, that video went viral, and we straight away went into protective mode. You know, we need to equip ourselves with the tools to be able to deal with this better, because you know, it's his reality, unfortunately. Every single day, we still get the looks in public. Most of the time now, people know who he is, so that's a positive. But I tell you what's the the thing that he really is disturbed by is people taking his photo and recording him in public. Pretty much every single day that we're out, the unauthorized photos and recordings of a child is quite alarming, that people think that they can just do that. And, you know, I have to accept responsibility for that, because it was my decision to go public. So I just have to tell him, get used to it, you know, that people are going to do that. They're going to take your photos and take videos. But I've had to get him a phone now. And I said, because if we're shopping, I'm not watching, you know, everyone, you know, I'm not aware of it. So I said, if you see anyone do it, you start recording and take photos and see how they like it. And he's been doing that in the shopping centres, and they automatically stop.
Good.
So we're learning different ways of dealing with things. So it's been a huge learning curve, but a huge wake up call and a huge reality check to be able to bounce back and to be able to come out of this stronger, so that people can see.
To be able to bounce back?
Yeah, to be able to bounce back from, you know, a negative experience. I think that's the message that we want to get across, for people to see that, yes, he has experienced some very difficult, challenging times in his life, but it has been very, very much character building, and we've all strengthened from it. We still have our good and bad days, like everyone. We're only human, but we have learned so much, and we have strengthened as a family and as a community, and it has brought so many people around the world together. And it's reminded us to be kinder to people, you know, the compassion. And I think what I'd love to touch on lastly is, you know, the statement that I read on your page, permission to be yourself. And for me, that's been huge, to accept myself for who I am, so that I can teach my son to accept yourself for exactly who you are. You don't need to feel like you're not good enough, because I felt like that most of my life, like I just wasn't good enough. I've always felt different. And that's our superpower. So I let him know now, you know, achondroplasia is your superpower, and you are going to change the world. We're going to make this world a better place by living by example and sharing our story, because sometimes that's all we've got is our story. And as humans, that's how we connect.
Yeah, now I moved a bit.
He's snoring so loud.
Oh dear. Okay, so thank you. Now I'm really touched. I have nothing to say. I'm really, Yarraka. Thank you. You've touched on so many wonderful points. So many. We are naturally resilient. We just don't know it until we are faced with situations where we realize how powerful we are. Thank you. Thank you for your time. And
No,
for
thank
sharing
you
your
for the
story with
movement.
me.
No problem at all. Happy birthday, and thank you for the very important work that you do in, you know, sharing your story, because it helps encourage and inspire other people to do the same. So I'm glad we're on the same page, and things are aligning. So it's good to be able to connect with like-minded people. So thank you, Diane.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't hesitate to share it. And if you'd like to listen to any other past episodes or to subscribe to the podcast, please go to butv.com. Thank you, and I hope to see you again. Bye for now.